Welcome back to the show, everyone. Nice to see you. Hope you guys are doing well. Hope you had a good weekend. This is going to be a little bit of a kind of, market update, kind of what's happening, what's the latest forecast, all that kind of stuff. I got a useless dog back on set today that's going to contribute probably not much, to tell you the truth, other than asking me to hold his paw like a little baby. But let's get into this. So, this video kind of came from an article I read in Fortune magazine. I was like, it's just kind of interesting, just compiling some of the numbers and stuff. So a little bit of a forecast from a Fortune article, but hey, home prices over the last 12 months up damn near 20%. I mean, that is just absolutely insane and astronomical growth. Now, of course, the thing that creates is people panicking, going, there's got to be a crash coming. There's got to be that big market correction. And depending on who you listen to, some people are like, it's big, it's going to be a 2008 and yada, yada, yada. I don't see it, okay? And here's the thing that we have to keep in mind when we have this conversation is kind of the root of some of the problems between 2008 versus now, which is that it's a totally different buyer who's buying stuff now versus buying stuff in 2008. 2008, you've got a lot of unqualified people with very shitty lending practices that are just buying stuff that they simply cannot afford, okay? And if there's any turn in the tide in their life, they get laid off from a job or the whatever happens, then they're upside down in their house and they're completely screwed. Totally different than what's happening now. What's happening now is because of 2008, you have very strict lending practices and there's all kinds of paperwork that you sign at the closing table. And frankly, a lot of it, like to my understanding, because I wasn't in that business 2008, a lot of it is because of 2008 to prevent us from getting back to that same point. That should make you feel good. But the quality of the buyers is totally different, right? Because now they're all underwritten and they're all going through pre-approvals and they're going through the proper processes in order to buy a house, right? And they are qualified, they have income to back it up, all that good stuff, right? So even if there was a market downturn, which I don't really see they're coming right now, you got to keep in mind, man, they're qualified buyers. And if you just sit there in your house and just ride it out for the next few years, then you're going to be fine because everything's going to correct itself as it always does. Of course, the caveat would be, well, what if I have to move and have to sell my house? Then, depending on where you are, if you only put down 3% or something, it's going to be case by case basis, right? But, so let's talk a little bit about it. Some growth predictions. I'm just going to hit you with a few different, either like real estate firms, websites or things, and kind of what their projections are. So Redfin, which I don't really, I just don't have any interaction there, so I don't really have any opinion on one way or another. End of 2022 growth rate, they're saying is going to slow down to 3% for the previous 12 months, okay? So Redfin saying, hey, 3%, 12 months from now will be the growth, which would essentially be a normal real estate market. That would have to be, it would be weird to me because you're just like, how has it been so crazy and then it just plateaus and then it just stops? It's like, well, what is the thing that's about to happen that just makes it stop and grow like a normal market? Like, what is that thing? A hike in interest rates? Because that would be the most likely culprit probably. Like what is the thing? So the 3% to me, I don't know, doesn't really hold up just based on logic, right? I'm not an analyst. You just got to keep that in mind, okay? I'm just a logic guy. Speaking of logic, a company called Core Logic, big real estate firm, apparently. I don't know Core Logic. They're foreseeing a 1.9% rise in prices over the next 12 months. Again, very similar to the 3. Just like, man, what is causing this to shut down so quickly? The Mortgage Bankers Association, that sounds like a fucking party, doesn't it? Predicts a 2.5% drop by the end of 2022. So they're predicting a drop that, hey, something's going to happen that's going to start to not only level it out, but actually make prices come down a little bit. Again, I'm not seeing what's going to cause that, and I'll get into that in a minute. Zillow, they're predicting a 13 to 14% increase. I hope it doesn't, as a homeowner, I'm like, that sounds great. Let's have that keep going. As someone who works in the business, I am not hoping to see that personally. It's just too much. It's pricing out too many first-time buyers. Goldman Sachs, of course, you guys know Goldman Sachs because they've never done anything wrong. They are seeing 16% growth by the end of 2022. Big numbers. Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, they're predicting 7 to 8% growth in 2022. That's about where I would probably like to see it, like in that 7 to 8% number. Not that my feelings have any bearing one way or another, but 7 to 8%, I would go, yeah, that'd be great, because you go, that's not a crazy amount of growth, but that's like really good growth. You know, that's 2.5 times a normal year worth of real estate growth. So if you kind of look at it and tally it up, you go, okay, you got a couple of big boys saying it's going to grow at the pace of a normal market, which would be a big shift in the tide. You've got the Mortgage Bankers Association saying it's going to drop, and then you've got some of the other big hitters saying it's going to grow at a pretty crazy rate even into 2022. So there's kind of two big variables here that are going to determine what happens. The supply chain crisis is definitely one of those, and that's just, you know, it's one of those things that I don't know that any of us really know what's going. None of us know what's going to happen with any of this stuff. But supply chain crisis, like, who knows what's going to happen, because we don't know what's happening. You know, it's like COVID's always giving us, you know, curveballs, and, you know, we're not going to go down that rabbit hole, but it's just like, who knows what's coming and how that winds up affecting things, if there's shutdowns or whatever, and how that then affects the supply chain. So we don't know. We know that getting materials, the raw goods, in order to make the things like the house, right, in order to do construction, is problematic right now, right? So new construction is taking longer than expected. And there's also pent-up supply and demand, right? So we get a supply chain that's struggling. We have low supply fueled by high demand. The demand largely coming from the fact that there's still very low interest rates, not quite as crazy as they were, but like essentially it's cheap money. It's a good time to borrow money. Fueled also by the fact that there's a lot of people that have figured out they can work from home and are relocating to other states and all that good stuff. I look at it and I'm like, well, what is it that is going to change, that's going to slow this whole thing down? The only two real things are, if there was a hike in the interest rates. Doesn't really sound like that's on the horizon, definitely not in a significant way. I mean, if we went from, let's just call it 3% right now to, you know, even 4 or 5%, you go, yeah, that would definitely slow things down, right? And things, what it would do, just for those of you know that don't necessarily get the ins and outs, and I'm by far from an expert, but it's like, look, if the interest rates go up, it means that the same $300,000 house now costs you more per month. And that is going to price out some people, largely first-time buyers, who are like, damn, I could have afforded the $300,000 first-time home buyer home when it was 3% interest rate, but now that it's 4.5, I actually can't afford that anymore, because that's a difference in, I don't know, a few $100 in my mortgage payment. So you've got less first-time buyers in the market, therefore things are taking longer to sell, right? They sit on the market longer, therefore the prices are going to fizzle down just a little bit because there's less frenzy to get those things, right? That's kind of the basic framework of how this works. So look, if the interest rate hike doesn't happen, not in a significant way at least, then the only other thing that you're really saying could impact it would be the supply chain. And again, that's an unknown. None of us know what's going to happen with that, because none of us know what the hell's going on planet Earth in 2021 or 2022. So I don't know, guys. For what it's worth, just kind of a logical perspective, I just don't see the thing that's really about to slow the ship down. I hope it slows down. I seek it to calm down a little bit. Again, as someone who has money in a home, I am like, yeah, let it just keep going, because, hey, you know, I refied my house and I've got my equity is just going to sit here and grow no matter what. So, of course, I love it from that perspective, but from the level of, I represent a lot of buyers and a lot of first-time buyers, I don't like what's going on, because it's making it so difficult for anyone to get anything. That said, I'm not seeing the catalyst for what's about to slow it all down. So just some food for thought. I do not come to you and pretend to have the answers on anything. I just kind of give you some stats and go, hey, look, here's some information. You make your determinations from there. In my opinion, though, still a good time to buy something, because I think the alternative of going, well, I'm going to wait a year and see what happens. Well, what if some of these predictions are, if it even grows 7 to 8%. Well, 7 to 8% on a $100,000 home is an increase in $7,000 to $8,000. On a $300,000 home, that's, you know, in the ballpark of $21,000 to $24,000. So would you rather buy it at 300 grand now, or would you rather buy it at 324 grand a year from now? Do you see what I mean? Or would you be excited a year from now if you're like, man, I bought it at 300, I already got 24 grand in equity in the house. You see the game. It's tricky, guys. None of us know the answer to it. Don't believe anyone that tells you they know what's going to happen. None of them do. We're all just taking our best guess. Not a whole lot to discuss in the way of whiskey. I got a couple local, well, one is the opposite of local. This is Japanese, but I was on a trip recently up in Montana, and I've never heard of this Montana. It just says Montana on it, from Bozeman, Montana. So haven't tried it, have not cracked this bad boy. I'm trying to slow how many I'm cracking so I don't age these. But anyway, I will try that at some point. I am, if I'm being honest with you, not holding my breath that that's going to be outstanding. I can't tell you why. I just think it's probably going to be a little bit rough, but I don't know. Sorry, Montana whiskey, if you watch this show. You don't. If you do, I hope it's delicious, though. Guys, hope you're doing well. Comment if you have any questions. I'm going to try to start doing more videos that are just answering questions of yours. So if you have any, please fire away. That said, hope you have a good rest of the week.